Thank you, Jill. I'll put the share screen on. Okay, hi. Good morning, everybody. My name is David Boyer, and I'm a licensed psychologist in Massachusetts. And the bulk of my work over 40 years has been working with children and adolescents who have suffered trauma and have significant emotional and behavioral challenges. But I've also worked with adults with developmental disabilities for many years as well. And currently, I'm a consulting psychologist for the BARC Traumatic Brain Injury Program. And I've been associated with them for probably about 15 years, running social skills groups and things like that. Here's a little quiz of the day. Just to date, I'm kind of a relic of the 70s. And can anybody identify who wrote the song Running on Empty?
Ooh, Jackson Browne.
Oh my God, you got it, right. Well, okay, here's the next question. What year?
76?
Very close, it was 77.
Oh.
So anyway, that's when actually I was still in, college, I think, but that it just made me think about that song. But anyway, I've been in, I've seen firsthand by working with staff in various organizations how truly hard everybody works and how truly hard family members work just to provide the daily acts of care. I mean, whether it's medical or ambulatory or feeding or toileting, it's as you all know, it's very hard work, and it takes a toll. So stress is an occupational hazard, for all direct caregivers. And I like to think of ourselves as the true first responders. You talk about fire people and police office, but family members and direct care workers are truly the first responders to any acute events that happen, okay? And it can be very stressful. So I wanted to also pay attention. If you can see my background, it's in the woods. And one of my major self-care strategies is to be in nature. I just love being in the woods. I'm a certified outdoor, what they call mindful outdoor leader, which is, I run groups where I take people into nature and we really get into getting the sensory experience of listening to watching the animals, listening to birds, touching stones, whatever it may be, identifying trees. So that's been a major source of self-care for me, has been in nature. And working with a lot of kids who have ADHD, I like to say you also have NDD, which is nature deficit disorder. A lot of our times are, we're stuck in Zoom, we're inside. And I think that's taken a toll, especially the pandemic, on anybody who's providing care. Not being able to connect with the familiar routines and familiar places, okay? So we have a rather ambitious agenda today, and I'm going to try to use the time as best I can here. Let's see. Okay, so the learning objectives today is to identify the effects of cumulative stress and compassion fatigue in your role as caregivers. And secondly is to incorporate stress reduction strategies into an individualized self-care plan. And I'm actually going to go through some of the techniques that you can use right on the spot if you're stressed out. Things like breathing exercises, muscle exercises. So we'll actually do some really cool things like that. And then we'll do a self-care assessment where I'm going to ask people, what types of self-care do you engage in currently, and what types of self-care would you like to pursue, after we do this training, okay? So anyway, I want to talk about the culture of caregiving. And, care providers are often undercared for, and sometimes a rather unhealthy bunch, some of us sometimes. So I'll ask you just a rhetorical question. When's the last time you did something nice for yourself? Just to ask that. You don't have to answer now, or I kind of liken caregivers to being a painter. So anyway, back in the 70s, I was a house painter listening to Jackson Brown, actually. and it was really interesting. Most of my fellow painters had houses where the paint was peeling from their houses, and it's almost like, the old proverb about the shoemaker whose children go without shoes, So a lot of times as caregivers, we're great at giving care to other people, but not taking care of our own home, okay? So, the culture of caregiving involves typically putting other people first. And as you know firsthand, the work can be hard and unrelenting. And if you're a family member, there's no punching the clock at the end of the day. It's kind of sometimes a 24/7 situation. And the more we give, the less we attend to our own needs. Our work is fortunately valued as, well, it's selfless and exemplary. But on the other hand, it's easy to get into kind of a martyrdom syndrome, sometimes, and I want to be cautious about that. The other part of caregiving is also the positive side. And I want to talk about something called vicarious satisfaction, which is the positive feelings you get when you contribute to the well-being of others, whether they experienced trauma, adversity, or developmental disabilities. There's something very empowering to witnessing people working through their challenges. And I think that's what gravitates, at least me as a professional, toward this type of work. It's just very meaningful. Okay. So when I think about self-care, I think about that analogy, when you're up in an airplane and you go through that boring intro, by the flight attendants about, making sure when the oxygen mask, drop down, that you put yours on first, because only that way can you help a child or another vulnerable person. You have to have oxygen, you have to have energy, you have to be ready and fit to be able to help other people. Okay. So that's the analogy. I think that kind of overrides a lot of things, is you do better taking care of others when you take care of yourself. So here's some of my favorite self-care quotes. One is by Maya Angelou, which is, "As you grow older, you will discover that you have two hands, one for helping yourself and the other for helping others." Here's another interesting one. "Some things are better not spread too thin, yourself and peanut butter," for those peanut butter lovers. And "Almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes." And uncanny, like with technology, I find that's really true. But I think it's also true when we unplug ourselves from being overstimulated, we can replenish ourselves. Here's another one. "Take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live." So we'll talk about physical self-care during the process too. Taking care of yourself doesn't mean me first, it means me too. And Claudia Black, who I've went to trainings on addictions and alcoholism, family work. She said, saying no can be the ultimate self-care. Okay, so that's just to kind of get us into the mood of self-care. So it has been a tough time, and we don't do caregiving in a vacuum. We do it in a social context. We do it in a, and this has been a crazy year, with the political and social unrest, with the pandemic, and people are still working hard, giving care under conditions that are not ideal. And we live in a culture where caregiving is undervalued, underappreciated, and often undercompensated. Okay. So I don't know about you, but I am suffering a severe case of COVID fatigue. I mean, I don't know if anybody else is, but I wish we could be doing this outside or together or in a room, but we're doing it on Zoom, which is the best we can do. And I think for those who are caring for either children or adults with disabilities, it's been particularly tough. We talk about the proverbial cabin fever, and it's just hard to live isolated from support systems that you used to see in person, from loved ones. We're not able to gather to mourn loss or to celebrate weddings. And sometimes, it can get very, I guess, redundant, like it's really hard to summon the energy. And I can talk to, about myself in terms of working in the programs. It's like, how creative can you be? How many times can you, you do bingo online or things like that. So coming up with activities for either family members or our clients can be very difficult, and especially when they can't go outside. For example, going on nature walks, or I used to like to go on trips to the museum with clients and things like that. So it takes a role. And as all the research has said, that the pandemic, we're seeing increasing rates of anxiety, depression, and stress. And the disadvantaged are hit the hardest in that respect around the pandemic, whether it's cultural, socioeconomic disadvantage, or racial disadvantage, or it's been hard. And as we all know, the economy has suffered for many folks. People have lost jobs. So we're doing caregiving, or you're doing caregiving under this incredible context of what I would call cumulative stress. And cumulative stress is stress caused by a combination and accumulation of professional and personal stressors. Just to give an example, and if you're a family member, professional also can apply, because caregiving is a job in many ways. I mean, it's work. I don't mean it's like a job, but it's work. So, some of the professional pitfalls or signs are when we start to become apathetic, we lose our motivation, we feel hopeless and pessimistic and even perhaps cynical. We get easily angered and irritated about things that didn't used to bother us. We get desensitized to significant behaviors. What I mean by that, like working with children who are explosive, in terms of their behavior, it's easy to say, okay, we're not going to address it. We're used to it, but things like that. We can get resentful toward staff or family members, maybe for not providing enough assistance or support for us. And all these things can take a toll in terms of our, concentration and in terms of our judgment even. On the personal side, it's very exhausting to be a caregiver. Sometimes we have poor sleep and eating habits, negative impact on friends and family. We can isolate from others and, choose to, it's an escape strategy that can often be helpful, but sometimes detrimental. And we can lose confidence in our abilities to provide care, feel anxious and depressed, or what I like to call is quick relief behaviors to manage stress. There are both, let me turn to that slide. There are quick relief behaviors that are healthy and unhealthy. And when I think of unhealthy quick relief behaviors that you people do, not just caregivers, it's like self-medicating, whether it's through drinking, smoking, marijuana, excessive use of marijuana. It could be overeating. It could be yelling at people, getting your anger out on them. All the, being quick-tempered. Those are all kind of really unhealthy quick relief behaviors, but we're not perfect, and sometimes they slip by. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to teach some healthy quick behaviors by the end of the morning, okay? Things that we can do that are healthy. And I know when I was a young man in the 20s, my first job as a childcare worker, we all used to go to the bar and shoot pool. And there's only so many days you can do that and not come in with a hangover, or, our kids were very savvy, and they knew, probably what we were up to. And being 24 and not, I always tell young people now is, ease off of that. It's okay to have a wine after work or something like that, but, don't do any binge drinking or smoking or whatever, people do. So what is burnout? Burnout's kind of insipid. It happens gradually, and it's a kind of a prolonged physical and psychological exhaustion caused by cumulative exposure to stress. Okay. So I have to tell you, I wrote the burnout manual, which I'm going to show you. I actually wrote a manual on how to burn out. So here it is. Never say no. Think about work on your time off. Stuff your feelings and gripes. Believe that you're indispensable and no one else can do the wonderful job that you do. Drink a lot, sleep little, and eat the wrong foods. And I have to say, I'm guilty on eating the wrong foods. Believe that you can cure every client, or thinking that nothing is going to change, failing to see the positive, and believing that the agency is trying to take advantage of you. These are all kind of pathways toward burnout, especially holding on, to resentment. And what I like to, think about people is to be a good self-advocate. We'll talk about self-advocacy because that's really part of self-care, is learning how to ask for help and support, or even assert your need for support and self-care, whether it's within your family system or whether it's within your work system. So for those who are working with individuals who have suffered acute or past trauma, and I have to say my introduction into working with developmental disabilities was when I was kind of an online worker at a group home for, these were clients who just left the state hospitals. You all familiar with Fernald and Danvers State Hospital? Well, a lot of the clients had told horror stories about how they were treated. Many of them were exploited or taken advantage of sexually and things like that. So, a lot of you may be working with such individuals who are older, who had suffered those type of traumas. And it has a negative impact on our own. I mean, it takes a toll on us as witnessing that and hearing their stories. And this can lead to changes in our physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. Um, and we may experience kind of like some fight or flight behaviors that are very similar to our clients' experience, okay? So secondary stress is when you're exposed to the trauma of others. It's rapid in onset. It's triggered by particular events, for perhaps seeing an act of aggression or being the recipient or watching, somebody assault another individual. Symptoms can include fear, hypervigilance. It's like being really jumpy, having intrusive thoughts of the episode, having difficulty time sleeping, numbing your emotions, and avoiding things that remind you of that particular event. Hopefully, a lot of you don't have to experience that level of stress, but many of you have, I'm sure. So I hope people have the opportunity to complete the professional quality of life scale. Don't feel bad if you didn't get to do it. You can always do it after the training or on your time when you have time to do it. But I found it a very valuable tool to kind of gauge, where do you stand along these things? How affected are you? And also, how satisfied are you with the caregiving that you do? So here's a moment for the chat room. One thing I'm going to ask is, for those of you completed it, what did you learn about yourself when you took this survey? Okay. And also, did anything surprise you when you took this survey? So please comment on that. If anybody needs for me to explain these more carefully, I can, or more. I have to say that if I took this test when I was like 20 years ago, I would have scored a lot higher on the burnout and other things. So it's also a function of where you are in your life, and what's going on in your life at this time when you do this. Jill, were there any chats left for you?
I was just going to put something in, but no, people have not been putting it in. Some people asked about where they can take the survey, so we'll provide that also.
Okay.
But
So, I just wanted to briefly describe the scale. I found it's useful for people who work, who are caregivers, but it also can translate well to family members who are caregivers as well. And the first scale has to do with what we call compassion satisfaction, which is the pleasure you derive from being able to do your work well, to be able to provide good care. How effective and positive do you feel you are as a caregiver? And your ability to contribute to the greater good of society. The burnout category is more, getting high scores in that is actually not a good thing. And it's associated with the things that we just talked about, feelings of hopelessness, difficulties in dealing with your work, things like that. And if you score low on that, you probably have very positive feelings about your ability to work effectively and provide effective care. And secondary stress is what we just talked about. If there are any detecting for any signs of secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. Okay, so I hope you can all take that. The link was provided in the brochure if you wish to do that. Okay.
I also posted it in the chat for everyone.
Oh, great. Thank you, Jill. Okay, so I want to get to the nitty-gritty of self-care. So there are a lot of what we call in the moment strategies that are very useful. For example, one strategy is to kind of take a walk in what I would call tapping out, meaning like if you have another person that you're working with, whether it's a family member, a spouse, or an older or an adult child who lives in the house or is there to support, these are good times to tap out and say, okay, you know, I need to take a break for 10 minutes, take a walk. And I call it tapping out, you know, time for somebody else to come in while I energize myself, okay? Delegate responsibilities to other people, whether it's family members or as such. Taking a break and finding a space. It's really interesting to me, having worked in all sorts of offices, from closets without windows to basements to noisy environments, that creating your own, what is that word? Feng shui, or did I say that right?
I think so.
Yeah, feng shui. Yeah, creating your own, making your living environment really pleasing to you, you know, and doing things like that. Comfortable furniture, you know, whether you have windows or some place to look out and enough air, having a coffee or water by you, access to music, and things like that. Just a really comfortable space. And that's true, you know, whether it's in your house or not, okay? And now I want to teach you a couple of we talked about unhealthy quick relief behaviors. I want to talk about some of my favorite healthy quick relief behaviors that you can do on the spot when you're feeling stressed. One of them is called 4 square breathing. And I would like for you all to be comfortable in your chair, sit back, be in a comfortable position, because we're going to practice this right now. You can have you can close your eyes or direct your gaze to the ground. So, you know, find yourself in a very comfortable position, okay? And we're going to do something called 4 square breathing, okay? So, you know, if you just follow my cue, I would like you to inhale a breath through your nose for 4 seconds. So take a deep inhale through your nose for 4, let it last 4 seconds, okay? All right, now hold it for 4 seconds if you can. And then slowly exhale your breath through your mouth for 4 seconds, okay? Did everybody get to do that? Okay. Now the key to what makes it 4 square is that you do it 4 times in a row. And you know, so everything's like on 4s. So that could be done in a matter of like a minute and a half. And I would really suggest you practice that. The really important thing about the 4 is the breathing, is the making sure when you breathe, you're taking your inhale through your nose and your exhale through your mouth, and you're drawing it out for 4 seconds. I've actually done this with clients where I check their pulse before this activity, and I check their pulse after, and uncannily, a lot of them have lowered their pulse rate. You know, I mean, it's a kind of a crude way to do it. You know, you put your hand on the vein there on the wrist, but and time it, but it works. So now I want to switch to mindfulness activities. Based on my work with outdoor work, I do something called sit spotting, which is finding a comfortable place where you're privy to nature or outdoors. You can even do it in a city if that interests you. And you sit in a comfortable position, relax, close your eyes, and just take in the sounds of what you're hearing, whether it's birds or the wind. it's a full sensory experience. What do you see? Do you notice animals or people? What do you hear in terms of, do you hear people, children playing or cars driving? And then feeling the wind on your face. You can even like take in the air. What do you taste? And things like that. Sit spotting, only takes about 10 minutes. If you have a nice place at your house or at work, or or even going into the woods, it's what we call a mindfulness activity. It keeps us really focused on in the here and now. It distracts us from all the stress that we may be experiencing. And most people, the research on this, which I've done a lot, is that it increases your overall emotional and physical health when you do that routinely. Okay. So I really a big fan of that nature. And then there's progressive muscle relaxation. And I do this with clients. So I'll ask you now, find an area of your body that typically gets really stressed, really tense. Like where do most people feel tension? Sometimes it's in the neck and shoulder area, right? Or it could be in the chest area, or it could be, I know with working with angry young men, it's typically in their fists. They really kind of bottle up and they're just ready to pounce. But find that area where you find that's most stressful. And what I would ask you to do is to tense it for 5 seconds. So let's say it's in your shoulders. See how I'm scrunching my shoulders? Hold that for 5 seconds while you breathe in through your nose. So now you're pairing the breathing and the muscle tension, and then slowly release the tension in your muscles, let go as you're breathing out for 5 seconds. So doing this, and you could do this going from head to toe, starting with curling your toes, going up to working your calf muscles, your thigh muscles, your abdomen, all the way up to scrunching your face, if you feel tension in your face. So hold it, use it with breathing, and it's often very effective, okay? So those are just quick things. I want to give you some other tips and strategies for self-care, which is promoting independence in the person you're caring for, because a lot of times we end up doing things for people that they can do themselves, and it creates more work for, it's that old adage, I'll do it myself. It's easier, right? So really, if you get into a habit of promoting independence, and for those who are capable of doing it, that's often good. Self-advocating for your own needs, asserting your own needs, delegating caregiving tasks to other dependable people, whether it's family members or other staff or friends, seeking respite when needed, joining community support groups, sharing the care is what I like to say. As you know, in family members, if you have somebody who has developmental disabilities or some emotional disabilities, it often takes a toll on other family members, and making sure that you can share the care, that you're not just tunnel vision focused on that person who requires it the most. Other family members also need care, and they can also be very useful in sharing the care too. Staying positive and focusing on the small successes. I have a quick story. I was working with this boy who was traumatized. He had what we call severe attachment problems. He didn't trust people because of his abuse. So instead of, we're not going to resolve this situation in 6 months or a year, but after 6 months, he finally called me by my first name. I said, oh my God, he called me David. What a great breakthrough that was. Yeah, he wasn't, that's what I mean, is really looking and for the small successes and feeling good about those things. Okay. So I'm going to move on to self-care planning because we have 7 minutes. And The ABCs of self-care are awareness, that's attunement to your own needs and feelings and limitations, and also attunement to the resources that are available to you. Balance between work and play, life activities, and your priorities and values, making sure that there's a balance in your life between all those different things. Connection, connecting to yourselves, connecting to friends and family, connecting to the community, and connecting to something larger than ourselves, whether it's spirituality or nature or things like that. So keep in mind those ABCs of self-care. Again, balance is extremely important in our lives as caregivers. So I want to take a poll, and I think there may be a thumbs up and thumbs down button for this. I want to see what self-care activities people are actually engaging in. Okay, so thumbs up if you eat healthy. Just give a thumbs up. We have 28 people, and
I don't know if we can. Oh, yes, we can. It's under reactions.
oh yes, reactions. Okay.
Yep.
How many people eat healthy? Oh, I see. Okay, it's coming up on the screen. Yeah.
And we have one of the caregivers said she does everything to eat healthy.
Okay, great. I'll go through these quickly because I know we're running out of time. How about getting enough sleep? How many of you do that? I have to say, I don't eat healthy, but I do get enough sleep. So we got people on that one. Okay. How many of you take time off when needed? Use your vacation time if you're working for an organization, or taking time away from, or respite if you're a family member to go on vacation, even if it's a stay vacation. People do that? Okay. Do any of you exercise regularly? I'm a fanatic about that. I'm just a fanatic. I actually have to relax in that respect. I have to calm down. How many of you belong to a peer support group or a community support group? Okay. So anyway, you get the idea of self-care activities. So I want to talk about doing a self-care plan. We have about 4 minutes. And here's a collage of self-care. If you want to look at it briefly. I like the one about not bringing work home on the bottom. Okay. These are, when you're thinking about self-care, try to think about the different dimensions of it. So it's not like this monolithic. It's often easier to plan your self-care if you break it down into these different areas, okay? Physical self-care would be eating and sleeping, getting exercise. Psychological self-care would be using your emotional support system. Emotional self-care is to, engage in relaxation, whether it's sit spotting, meditation, or prayer. And well, that's actually spiritual self-care. And professional self-care is being able to say no, being able to take breaks during your busy day, and things like that. And we're striving for balance. So I want to show you something that you can use to kind of plan your self-care. And it's a work in progress for many people. So this is something that I kind of developed off of different other types of plans. And one is to identify the sore spots, or what are the areas of burnout or stress, and just identify them. And then going across the board, what are the quick relief behaviors that you do or customarily do, whether they're unhealthy or healthy? You know, some of the things we just talked about. Strengths and skills and resources. What assets do you have, both internally? Are you patient, resilient? Do you have outlets? Do you have support groups? Do you have certain skills? Like, are you good at resolving conflict? Are you good at, leisure skills and all that kind of stuff? And the barriers to self-care are, what are the things that get in the way of self-care? Is it time? Is it financial? Is it inability to say no or set boundaries? Feeling that you don't deserve it or you're not important enough? We all have different boundaries for that. And then what I would like people to do or to start thinking about is, what are some of the interventions? What are some of those areas of self-care that you can practice? And the real key is to building it in your schedule. Because if things aren't built into your schedule, you probably won't do it. I know I don't do it. So I write a to-do list. Well, I'm going to work out after work, or I'm going to take a walk in the woods. So really try to get into the habit of scheduling this into your busy day, and then sharing it with other people. So if you have two people working on this, you can give each other support. And just like like when I go to the weight room and there's somebody say, "Come on, Boyer, you can do it." Come on, lift. It's important to have that kind of person there to support you in your self-care. Okay, so I'd like to answer any chats that people may have at this point. We only have a couple of minutes.
We don't have any questions in the chat, but if questions come in, we will send them to you, and maybe you can answer them and we'll share them after this, because we are out of time. But thank you so much. This has been so informative.
Well, thank you. I can't believe we're on time.
Yeah, you did very well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And I left a contact. Let me go to this quickly. Anybody want to write this down? You can contact me with questions regarding my, what this workshop was or any other interests. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye, everybody.